Good morning, I'm Chris Fox. Welcome to the conclusions portion of the 21-day novel challenge. So the challenge is over. I've got a book that I have now read and think is going to do really well on Amazon when it's released. You will hear all about that in the Launch to Market series of videos that I'll be doing in the near future. But in the meantime, I wanted to talk about some things that I learned along the way. I'm also going to include a final Q&A section, which has some of the last questions that I felt like were important to answer that haven't been answered thus far. So we'll go ahead and jump into the next segment of the video. I'm going to talk a little bit about my writing journey and the things that I learned in this challenge. To understand how I was able to pull off the 21-day novel challenge, you kind of have to know where I come from. Not just as a writer, but how I approach things in general. So 5 years ago, I worked in a collections department. I was making $12 an hour. Every month, I fell a little bit further into credit card debt. I had no marketable skills. I had no degree. But I knew that I wanted to do something greater with my life. Unfortunately, at that time, the iPad came out. It was the first generation iPad. I'm sure you all remember when that hit the market. People were laughing at the device at first, but I knew as soon as I picked it up that smartphones and tablets were going to be everywhere. And so I invested a couple $1,000s I did not have in my first Mac. It was a MacBook. And the software needed to teach myself iOS development. And I sat down and during breaks and lunches and mornings and evenings and weekends for the next 18 months, that was my focus. Around work, I taught myself to be an iPhone engineer. There weren't very many resources on the internet about this because iOS programming was very new. I persevered. There were a lot of frustrating days. It was difficult because I didn't know what I didn't know. But at the end of that 18 months, I went from making about $35,000 a year to $60,000 a year. And that started to work out very quickly, so I convinced that employer to bump me up to $72,000 a year. And then a year later, I took a job at Cellscope, and suddenly I was making six figures for the first time in my life. And after solving challenges for them, every year I got a significant raise. So I went from working in collections to being a highly paid software engineer. I don't have a college degree. I was surrounded by people with Ivy League degrees, people from, Princeton and Yale and Harvard and Stanford with their PhDs. These were the people that I rubbed elbows with as a college dropout. And I was able to do that because I put in the discipline, the focus, and the time to learn that new skill. When I decided to become a writer, I had that job. I was working 60 to 80-hour weeks developing software. And when I say developing software, we frequently were given challenges where, so far as we knew, it was impossible to make the iPhone do what we needed it to. And I had to find a way around that and get it to do the things that we didn't believe the hardware was capable of. And usually I succeeded, sometimes I failed. But that kind of stress, it's really, really difficult to deal with. And so finding the wherewithal to teach myself to be a novelist on the side was really hard. But since I'd already done it, since doing this collections job, I had taught myself iOS programming on the side, I knew that doing the iOS job, I could teach myself writing on the side. So if you assume that the reason that I pulled this challenge off is because I'm a full-time writer, it's not the case. I taught myself to write fast and write clean because I only had an hour a day. Because like you, I had a really busy life and I had a full-time job. The way that I escaped that full-time job was devoting my mornings to working as hard as possible to be the best author possible. I watched videos that taught me how to do various types of writing skills and read craft books and read books in my genre, and I wrote every morning on the bus and sometimes in the evening if I didn't hit my word quota. It wasn't easy, but I've got that escape velocity now. I now do this full time because of the just immense amount of effort that I put in. And the whole point of this long rant is to say, if you put in a similar amount of effort, you will probably see similar results. And the reason why a lot of people don't see those results is they don't put in the effort. What did you do when you woke up this morning? How many words have you written? How about yesterday? What do you plan to do tomorrow? If the answer is in all three cases, I cranked out 1,000 words or 5,000 words or whatever your goal is, awesome. You're on your way to success. If the answer is I didn't do anything, then you need to realign your priorities. Do you really want to be a writer? Are you willing to put in the work? If you are, things like what you just saw me do in the 21-day novel challenge are absolutely within your grasp. There is nothing special about this. I'm not the first person to do it. I'm not the 1,000th person to do it. And you, when you do it, won't be either. You'll be following the footsteps of so many people who've made this possible and demonstrated that it can be done. So I'm hoping that today you sit down and do your writing. Okay, first question in the Q&A. I'm curious, how much do you read per day? An hour? Do you ever burn out on reading? I read for at least an hour a day. When I say reading, that's a loose term. I put it in air quotes, reading, because a lot of what I do is audiobooks, and I do audiobooks because I can do it on the treadmill, I can do it while hiking, I can do it while commuting. So I do enjoy reading. If I am reading, it's probably an ebook, so I can do it on my phone or tablet or wherever I have handy. And I read a variety of different books, from the bestsellers in my genre, mostly because I enjoy them, also because it's great research, to nonfiction books. Currently, I'm reading a book called Sapiens that talks a little bit about human evolution and how we evolved as a species. Next week, maybe it'll be a Benjamin Franklin biography. I'm always reading new things because everything that you read is giving you new ideas in some way. So I do that as often as possible, but I do burn out. I do reach times where I just don't feel like reading. Maybe I'll listen to podcasts for a week or just music while I'm thinking. And I think that's okay too, so I will take breaks. But in general, I go through at least 2 books a month, sometimes as many as 5. Okay, next question. Given how powerful your method is, doesn't it make more business sense to focus solely on nonfiction over fiction, since 90K words takes longer to write than, say, write to market? I guess if you're looking at this from a purely financial standpoint, that might be true. My typical length for a nonfiction book is 15 to 20,000 words, and a novel is 60 to 130, depending on which series I'm writing. So novels do take a lot more expertise, a lot more time, and a lot more polish. But they also have a much longer shelf life. So if you write a series of great novels today, that's probably still going to be selling in 3 decades. If you write a great nonfiction book today, there's a pretty good chance that in 3 years it'll no longer be relevant. It'll still be up and for sale, but its shelf life is kind of over unless you revisit it. There's also the issue of market saturation. So when I write a nonfiction book aimed at writers, a lot of people that know me and my platform and the other books that I've released may go out and buy that book. If I release one every 3 months, most people will probably pick up every one that I release. But if I release 2 of these a month, if I were to put out 24 nonfiction books a year, which I could easily do, how many of you would read 24 nonfiction books a year? I'm going to guess probably none. I wouldn't. I wouldn't read all those books. So there's definitely a point of diminishing returns if you're going to do nonfiction. I mean, I guess you could take a Steve Scott approach, do multiple pen names and do it across genres. So maybe write some motivational books and then also some books for writers and then maybe, some finance books, and that could work. But I'm looking for a sustainable, enjoyable way to do this, and that means a mix of fiction and nonfiction for me. I want to love every book that I put out, and for me, it's not about min-maxing how much money I'm going to make per word that I write. It's about consistently releasing books that are either going to entertain people if it's fiction or teach them if it's nonfiction. And I don't look so much at the minutia of where is the money coming from. Does this method also work on going wide? So this question has to do with right to market and how I recommend using Amazon to figure out what niche you want to pursue. It kind of works if you go wide, but all of the other vendors from Apple to Kobo to Nook are what we call boutique vendors, meaning that they choose which books they're going to highlight. It's not like Amazon, where the algorithms will push you into visibility. You kind of need a rep at one of these other outlets to sort of help you get visibility. So if you are going to go wide, you're not going to automatically get traction following the write to market method. However, if you write a book to market and it's good, the people at those outlets are going to be willing to work with you because they're always after good content. Yeah, looks like that's it for the Q&A. You will see additional Q&As in future videos after the challenge is over, but that's going to close it up for this challenge. So once again, thank you so much for being along for the ride. This is the final video that you will see in the series for the 21-day novel challenge. From here, you're going to get at least 2 videos a week. One of those is going to be, over the next 4 weeks anyway, about outlining, and another one of them is going to be about launching Destroyer to market. Once those are finished, I do have other series planned, and I'm always looking for more suggestions. So if there's something that you want to learn about either the business or craft of writing, just let me know. Shoot me an email to chris@chrisfoxwrites.com or post in the comments, ping me on the website, find me on Facebook.